I am so glad that we are back. And that Singapore kept that back straight. It's so much nicer than before. But here comes something with added spice. A massive bit of Italian gossip came up on my feed in regards to Charles Leclerc, and that supposed exit option in the middle of his extension to the Ferrari contract. You know the one that meant that at the end of 2027 he could assess his options. And it does make you wonder. We all wondered about where Max Verstappen could go in the not too distant future. But in the recent uptick with Red Bull, that's been kind of pushed away for a little bit. And now, coming into our mirrors, is the likes of Charles Leclerc, Il Predestinato himself. Could it be a situation where Il Predestinato could forsake the world of Ferrari due to the fact that, well, it's been so many years at this point, and he's nowhere close in going for a world championship? Well, I can certainly imagine his management is thinking that because, well, they're doing their job and talking to other teams. At least according to this report from Italian publication RMC Motori, Leclerc's representatives have been very busy talking to 3 high-profile teams about a supposed port of call away from Ferrari, should the team get the incoming regulations disastrously wrong. The article becoming really emotive, as many Italian articles do tend to get, and I would say take much salt with this one. This is still something that is based around paddock gossip, albeit slightly educated. It does point out, this piece, that Charles Leclerc still loves Ferrari, almost to a fault, but that particular fault, if left unchecked and really not catered toward, could end up becoming a chasm. And again, leave him without any sort of answers at all to McLaren. The closest he got to disrupting McLaren was back in Bahrain when he kept Lando Norris behind him for a little bit. And curiously enough, McLaren is actually one of those 3 teams that Leclerc's management has been talking to. Alessandro Aluni-Bravi, you know, that really weird guy that we barely saw when he was working at Alfa Romeo and Sauber. Yeah, he's now part of McLaren's legal team, and he's been talking with Charles's people, and now people, including this article, are rumoring that, oh, there could be a straight swap between Oscar Piastri and Charles Leclerc. What? Yes, again, this article does read as paddock gossip, but the sheer amount of heat and the broad reach this news had in the midst of him and Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari complaining about who gets to have 8th place, it really does highlight the difficulties that Ferrari are going through at the moment as they are descending possibly to 4th place in the Constructors. And it does signal that Leclerc's camp is really starting to go up the gears in terms of maybe moving away their man from Maranello, who we all thought it was going to be impossible that he would definitely be at that team for a decade or so. Well, he is getting on a little bit. It won't be that long until he is actually approaching 30. So at that point, he's really got to pick a side to go for the World Championship. The closest time he got to it was 3 years ago. That's wild. And the other 2 teams that are being mentioned? Well, there's Aston Martin and Mercedes, of all people. Toto's now trying to go, well, if I'm not going to get Max Verstappen, and George Russell's being a bit of a silly billy regarding contracts. To me, McLaren seems very unlikely, unless either Oscar or Lando have a messy divorce. Aston, that's structurally the most plausible because it does enter next year as a Honda Works team, with Adrian Newey on board. And since George Russell has been regularly tied to that team in recent musings, Leclerc being one option as well. That's a fair shout after Fernando goes. I remember musing this myself not that long ago. Again, Mercedes is the wild card here, and it does make me raise my eyebrows a little bit, especially regarding Verstappen and the continued saga about Toto wanting Max, but then kind of not wanting Max, but then wanting his current drivers, but then not actually signing a deal on paper yet. We are approaching October, and it's still not signed. This is really weird. And now Charles Leclerc is being rumoured and attached to this team. What on earth is going on? With this article even existing, it's talking about this. It's out there in the public sphere. People are talking about Leclerc leaving Ferrari, and this time, with a little bit of substance, it's a slap in the face to the Scuderia, amidst them trying to figure themselves out, amidst all the corporate meddling that Enzo Ferrari himself tried to keep away from this team, for this exact reason. It's spoiling the Ferrari tradition. This is not tradition. And I'm pretty sure that if Charles Leclerc does leave Ferrari, they won't be tearing Charles a new one. They will be looking to the team and going, how dare you get to this position where one of our most beloved drivers, a boy who is destined and hoping to be with Ferrari forever, give up on us? As his teammate once said regarding his McLaren days, loyalty has its limits, and we might be approaching that for Charles. But ultimately, I think Ferrari will recover from this because their pipeline in terms of the driver academy, it's looking fairly decent actually. So Come 2028, if Lewis is retired and Charles Leclerc does leave, I can imagine that maybe Ferrari would go young and sign up Oliver Behrman, give him the promotion up to the main team. And then, of course, there's the Formula 3 champion Rafael Camara. That could be a pretty good lineup for a good few years, actually. We need somebody high profile to be ruminating them leaving, and we're already getting tired of George going somewhere, or George really stomping his foot down at Mercedes with Toto. Charles leaving? That coming back up again? Okay. Because no mistake, that official confirmation of Charles's contract extension, it did come with a couple of asterisks, which did get overlooked because people were thinking, Charles, multi-year, 2029, wow. But needless to say, this coming back up in my feed again, it to me just said, hello, old friend. And another old friend in terms of a topic is regarding Red Bull and Yuki Tsunoda. This time, him getting a little bit of a support from Max Verstappen, but in a very non-political manner, basically just saying, hey, if he's going to be axed, at least do it fairly. Because yes, this isn't something plucked from some random pundit. This tidbit comes from his own teammate, the Dutchman presenting the idea that the RB21 has managed to provide him and his teammates some sense of confidence after many months of inconsistencies and mistakes, including the long and painful road of trying to cure the team of the second seat curse. Seriously, it's like been watching the original Exorcist movie. But here are Max's quotes for your consideration. Him. Throughout the season, we have been going a bit left and right with the setup, and I feel like now we are starting to be more stable with the behaviour of the car. I hope that will help both drivers because it is not always easy to jump in the car when it is unpredictable or not doing what you want. Then with the field being so close, 1 or 2 tenths, you can be through to Q2 or out in Q1. It's a very, very competitive field at the moment, so now, at the coming races, hopefully with the car being in a more stable window, it will help both drivers. Now, there is some important context here which really matters about what Max said here. Tsunoda himself has flagged many times how unpredictable the handling could be, and that would consign him to exiting out of qualifying far earlier than expected, which does fit what Max is describing about setup swings and the need for a stable window. Because that's been one of the major topics regarding this car, the operating window, it being practically non-existent, it being so narrow. Well, thankfully, it might be opening it up a little bit and allowing Friday to be far less chaotic, as well as going on the tidbit that they are relying less on the simulations and relying on what the actual drivers are saying. And I like what Max is saying right here is that he's not coming to the immediate defense of Yuki and just saying, hey, back off Yuki, he's my teammate, he's doing okay. He's doing this in a far more technical way, saying, hey, the car's actually coming to both of us, which should give us a really good car to be able to do something with the remaining races. It's a very technical description of what's going on right now, and that things at Red Bull are looking a little bit more harmonious and far less chaotic, and not making it look like some kind of pity party for Tsunoda. And if it means that we are having to make a decision, because Red Bull haven't made their decision yet, both Laura Mekies and Helmut Marko has said the jury's out for the time being. I heard some reports that they're not going to make a decision before Mexico, then it could mean that, hey, if it does mean that some drivers are going to be leaving, then whatever assessment is done, at least it's fairer than it would have been around the time of Liam Lawson's demotion and Yuki stepping in. Because we've heard time and time again about Max railing against what happened regarding driver swaps, him saying that time and time again, it's not the problem, the driver, it's the car. Change the car. Well, the car has been changed, and now Max is a lot more stable and a lot more content. The assessment has been done a little bit more diplomatically rather than erratically. It's a very smart message of Max also to send this before the Singapore Grand Prix, what the press has dubbed the team's bogey track. Even though last year for him and the team, it was actually pretty good, all things considered. If the car is indeed less left and right on setup and has a larger scope, especially key since there is only one practice session this weekend because, sprint, Max will stand to benefit. Yuki himself will also stand to benefit. Heck, the entire team will benefit overall. Them not having to scramble through the data and going, well, why doesn't this line up with the stuff we're getting on the track? They're looking a little bit more organised and a little bit calmer. Really important. Now we are getting back into sprint races again. It'll be very interesting to see because this will be, I think, the first sprint race since Laurent Mekies has taken on the team. But yeah, Max has been saying it has been very hard at Red Bull for all concerned, that maybe now things are getting a little bit more simple in all respects. And it might have been a little bit of a dig at the old guard regarding the Liam Lawson decision. But anyway, you probably want to hear more about the track itself. Well, here you go. I just still can't get over the fact that they're keeping this back straight. I really, really like it. Yeah, Marina Bay is one of those ultimate low-speed, traction-heavy exams. With the old Bayside chicane, yeah, that's not going to be returning now. I still think that was a good idea, even though it was meant to actually be originally part of just construction efforts. Because it trimmed lap time, it added another genuine overtaking opportunity, and it makes qualifying a little bit less of a caged animal. And, as I touched upon just now, we are getting a sprint weekend. I'm not gonna lie, when I found out that Singapore was going to be a sprint weekend, I was thinking, oh my god, Stefano, are you a sadist or something? This is the most intense race on the calendar. Qatar was up there with Singapore, but now it being closer to December, it's not nearly as bad as it was when it was set in October. Yeah, now this is going to be the hottest race, even though it's at night, the most humid by far, and George Russell, he almost collapsed. I really hope that all of the changes that the FIA and Formula One have made towards driver safety in hot conditions like this are actually going to work. I really do. But in the midst of this, there should be a track where it separates the good from the great, like Interlagos when it gets really, really soggy. And also with Pirelli, they are bringing in the C3 for the hards, C4 for the medium, and C5 for the softs. And we are not going to be seeing the C6 around here because it got the message from Max Verstappen when he basically told that tyre to basically stay home. And also, according to Pirelli, strategy should be really important since, like in Zandvoort, the pit lane speed limit has been increased by 10 miles an hour, which will reduce lost time in the pits. And of course, a safety car should be never counted out here. But in regards to who could be in contention for points, the Ferrari should easily be within the top 10. Top 5 territory? I'm not so sure. Look, Leclerc is one of the sharpest qualifiers around here in recent memory, so he shouldn't be discounted from maybe pulling off an upset. But we got to consider here that over the weekend, the forecast is looking a little bit choppy. There is some rain forecast, but it could be a case of it coming in and taking away all the rubber generated from the previous day, as well as the F1 Academy weekend, because that is taking place as well. It could mean things are a little bit more on the jeopardy side. And Charles Leclerc, I feel like, might be in the mix of maybe trying to take out the person in 5th place, who I pegged for 5th place. I'm going to leave for just a little bit later. You've also got to include track sensitivity, the weather conditions, not just the rain, but also rear tyre temperatures, and ultimately traffic. That stretching the accordion effect, that is going to do a number on any car that finds itself down there, no matter who you are. And Baku really did a number on me in terms of assessing where Ferrari is right now. I thought in some races they were doing okay, and Baku they started off really, really strong and then completely faded away. Them scrabbling for the bottom end of the points. So really? 6th place for Charles? I really don't think that's, that rash of a decision. And as for Lewis Hamilton, well, I mean, I think he would do reasonably okay, but it really depends whether or not he decides to actually take part this weekend, or maybe just keep it to just skipping the media day after the sad loss of his buddy Roscoe. You might be thinking, really, he would abandon a race for a dog? Well, look, dogs matter. I have become a dog owner recently. I have had many pets in my life. Lewis losing Roscoe, somebody who's been a constant with him since his ascent into god-tier Formula One stardom, that's going to be a major wrench. So if he decides to pull out of this weekend, yeah, just let him do what he needs to do to process. If Lewis does decide to take part, I think he could be in contention for points as well. You might be wondering if Antonelli could get in the top 10. Well, it might be on the cusp of it, him tussling with the likes of Alex Albon and Fernando Alonso, but it really is depending on how he copes with the track conditions. All the rookies, I'm expecting to have a little bit of a hard time in this sort of weather. I really hope they've been training for this. But speaking of Alonso, he does remain the paddock's best opportunist, even though the car is a little hit or miss at the moment. But it really depends on what happens in terms of reading the situation about safety cars and virtual safety cars. I mean, we're not going to talk about Crashgate, but I think 8th place is maybe a realistic haul so long as you can get into Q3. Like I said with Charles and Lewis and anyone else, if they get stuck in traffic in the bottom 10, yeah, good luck. Tsunoda, I think, could easily be in the contention for points. Baku was a major milestone for him. The car seems to be coming toward him. And if Max has a really good time of it in practice, I could expect that Yuki might have a similar thing. Him just getting what he is at least expecting. But it really depends on whether he can make good use of the traction and the better one-lap pace that has actually come back to him, and if he can continue not being the hero, as he described. So long as he can pick his battles and keep things rational, then he might be on to continuing his point streak and actually having a point streak. And with Alex Albon, yeah, he certainly is in contention for some points as well, especially if things get really, really complicated and a little bit chaotic, because he does thrive in that sort of condition. But yeah, there are quite a few people in the mix for the bottom points orders, but you're probably wanting to know who I think is going to be near the top end of the points. Well, look no further, because here they are, my top 5 predictions. Now, you might be wondering about who I'm going to be picking for 5th place, and no, it's not Charles Leclerc. I'm going to be pegging in Carlos Sainz. Now, you might be wondering, hang on a minute, Law, this is not based around hype, is it? It's a little bit more substantial than me going, oh, Carlos got on the podium, therefore he can do absolutely everything. Yes, that was a really big turning point, and that it has released a lot of pressure, but that is not a signal that he is suddenly going to be on an absolute tear and then take down his teammate in terms of the point standings. No. But it does reevaluate expectations somewhat, that maybe there might be a step forward, and it does make you wonder about what Williams' potential is. Even though James Vowles and company have been talking down their prospects of Singapore, them very much relying on sandbags like Vowles and Mercedes used to do back in the day, I think there are good examples from the past to say that Carlos might really have a good time around here, especially now he's managed to prove his point to the wider world again. Because Singapore rewards patience, and Carlos demonstrated around Baku his prowess around the low-speed corners and bits where we are getting a lot of straights. Had this been a situation with the old configuration of Singapore, oh yeah, Williams wouldn't stand a chance around here. It'd be really, really miserable for them. But ever since 2023, it's looked a little better for them, especially if he can have a good time around qualifying, because that has been one of his strengths, where he can actually out-qualify Albon, get into Q3, but then in the race itself, it all goes Pete Tong. And of course, the stop-start rainy conditions, that can throw some surprises, like it did around Baku, where there was a little bit of rain where it made the track a little greasy. Not enough to do inters, but it certainly threw the cat amongst the pigeons. And it meant that the Ferraris and McLarens didn't qualify where they were supposed to. And I do think that Williams' efficiency with that car was proven, that what they have done with the FW47 to improve their straight line speed, the weight, the cooling, will actually benefit a lot, that we won't be seeing their engine going bang. We will be seeing them actually making good use of the top speed. Because Baku was a real game changer, and it does make you think what Alex could have been able of doing had he qualified where he was supposed to. I'm hopeful for Carlos, but it is a little bit of a tenuous punt, I will give you that. But I am feeling a little bit frisky here, and many of you complain that I am a little bit too safe with these predictions. So here you go. Here's a little bit of a bold take for you. And then in 4th place, I am going to say it's George Russell. Him mirroring what he was able to do last year with the W15, where he also got 4th place. And not doing what he did in 2023, where he crashed out of a potential podium. Because, yeah, 2025, it's been a series of peaks and troughs, and yeah, the peaks have been really, really high, with the Canada win, that was on merit, and then Baku rising from 5th to 2nd amidst him feeling really, really sick. That was a really big tour de force, right up there with his Bahrain P2, when the car was basically trying to reset itself during a race. Yeah, of course, the weather is very much going against the ideal W16 conditions in that it's going to be really hot, it's going to be really humid, but you do have to look around Marina Bay last year where they were somewhat competitive, being in the first couple of rows, and that's where I would expect George to be, to qualify within the top 5, and it might be a little bit of an unspectacular weekend because, yeah, last year he was 4th, but he was about a minute behind Lando Norris, who won last year. There could be some elements that might give him a bit of an opportunity. The C3 tyre is the hard tyre, which is a tyre that the W16 Mercedes really like, and it just makes me think that George might want to try and make this go long, that maybe there might be an opportunity, especially if he can get off the start. George is one of the best starters on the grid. If he can get in the mix between Verstappen and the 2 McLarens, who's to say that maybe a cheeky punt on the podium might be on the cards? But I still think that is a little bit of a guessing game sort of thing. The conditions really did a number on Russell last year, so I am just going to measure my expectations amidst Verstappen having a tear, the 2 McLarens wanting to hopefully rebound from last time out around Baku, because Zach Brown doesn't want to talk about Baku, So I think 4th place for George is perfectly reasonable. Then in 3rd place, I've got Max Verstappen. And you might have been thinking that based on my recent videos that I would have Max Verstappen winning the Singapore Grand Prix by a bajillion seconds. Well, no. I am really, really fired up about what Max Verstappen can do as a disruptor to the controlled environment that is the title battle between Piastri and Norris, but I am not going to go off on the deep end of this one. This is a track where Max Verstappen has never won before. I do expect him to managing his expectations and not overdriving the car. It is coming back to him. It's coming back to his teammate. But I don't think it is right there. They are hoping for the best, and Max is getting a little bit tempestuous, him not ruling out a title bid, but he's saying it's going to be tough, that being the recent comment from yesterday. But I do think that there is a good chance for the RB21 to be at least 3rd place. You can't discount Max Verstappen, especially after that GT3 weekend. The mental release, that is going to be really important for Max around a track which has been historically difficult for him. And when it comes to street circuits, you're seeing Max really, really kick on. I've heard a couple of reports where he's been able to learn a couple of things from Sergio Perez, what people describe as the street king for a little bit. So when it comes to the race itself and qualifying, it really depends on what Max and Red Bull want to do. Do they want to try and go for the undercut? Both McLaren drivers will now have to think about Max, even if he doesn't go on to win the title. Or do they decide to do what they did before and go low downforce, try and get the most out of the top speed back straights, and then around Baku, just hope for the best around the low speed turns, because that has been a major improvement of the RB21 especially. So maybe just do that. Hopefully, they've been able to improve in regards to the curbs, but you then look back to the RB20, the monster. Max came 2nd. Yes, 20-ish seconds behind Lando Norris, but it was still 2nd place, and he kept Piastri behind him. So when it comes down to it, especially if McLaren lock out the front row, what Max has to do is rely on strategy to help him out. I don't think he will be getting on the front row this time. So in short, it's going to have to be depending on controlled aggression here. Me putting him in 3rd place is not a great sign in terms of his title campaign, because it means he will be losing ground to Oscar and Lando, but you've really just got to think about the remaining races to come. Those being races where Max has a better history, this being a real low point, and him wanting to at least just try and muddle through. Figure somewhat, and the sprint might help him out a little bit, but I don't really like to predict the sprints because they are just too short, they are too chaotic. Let's just enjoy the uncertainty of that particular chestnut, especially given the fact that Max absolutely loves sprints whilst also hating them. So for these predictions, I am very much checking the delirium at the door, or the hatch. So, okay, 2nd place, I am going to be putting it by just a couple of seconds or so, Oscar Piastri. I am just going to go along with the party line that I've seen in the comments that whenever I predict my boy to be winning a Grand Prix, he then ultimately doesn't go on to win it. So I'm going to try some reverse psychology here a little bit. Okay, I will come up with some at least justification that seems a little bit rational. Yeah, on recent forms, he has been the sharper Sunday operator. It's just really come undone in qualifying, which gives him a little bit of a disadvantage regarding Lando. And then what we got in Baku, that was probably one of the worst weekends of his Formula One career. No, one bad weekend does not a botched title championship campaign make, but it's certainly going to be something in the back of Oscar's mind, that he is going to want to rebound, but not overreach. This is going to be a moment where he will just be thinking, look, if I can just at least get 2nd place here, where I got P3 last year, that's a nice little bit of progress. Damage limitation around a track which Lando really, really enjoyed, and he dominated like in Zandvoort. But then you've got to be thinking that maybe Oscar does have a chance here after all, because he did do really well around Zandvoort, a track where Norris did in 2024, so who's to say he might be closer to Lando this year at Singapore, or maybe one better. So why are you pegging him back? Well, I do have to think about Azerbaijan. I don't want to think about it, but many people pointed out to me that even though Oscar did crash out come turn 5, he did actually take a couple of positions. He was in a rush to get back where he was originally meant to be. It does make you think, what might have been? We might have seen a remarkable comeback effort for him trying to get past his teammate. That would have been his goal, just finish ahead of Lando. But we didn't get that. One tap on a barrier or on a wall is going to lead the front wing damage, dirty air will crop up, and dirty air is still a weakness of Oscar's, albeit it's starting to get a little bit less of that. And I still remember the back end of 2024 not being a good time for Piastri, so I do have to consider that as well, as was any potential strategy wobble, both for him and Lando, who I do ultimately think is going to be winning back-to-back Singaporean Grand Prix. Although this time around, probably not by 20 seconds or so, because as we saw, with 20 seconds being far ahead of the competition last year, he did come very close to binning it in the barrier, and people calling that the ultimate bottle job. And that is something in the back of his mind as well, because sure, Piastri did crash out, and that wasn't a good look for him, but Oscar was able to sort of laugh it off by kicking back with a banana and some chocolate donated to him by the marshals, whereas Lando, he was out there, people thinking he could at least try to climb up back to 5th, but he was stuck in 7th, and not really capitalising on Piastri's greatest blunder since Canada 2023. But nevertheless, the recipe of Singapore still rewards him and favours him, and he will remember fondly what happened around Marina Bay, one of his most accomplished weekends of last season. McLaren could be absolutely mighty, but Baku really threw a curveball because they were really convincing in 2024, but then 1 year on, without mini DRS as well, McLaren looked really shaky, as did Ferrari, so it's sort of thrown my expectations off a little bit. I don't think McLaren have lost the plot entirely. I'm not saying that they've suddenly become no longer the fastest car. That would be absolutely silly. But it did throw a really major spanner in the works, a very major curveball, which might go some way of providing some jeopardy and entertainment toward the back end of the season, where we thought that was going to be non-existent just a couple of months ago. Max suddenly coming up again, McLaren wobbling around a little bit meaningfully, both drivers doing so in recent Grand Prix. Oh yeah, it's looking far more spicy right now. And also, you do have to admit that Red Bull's Baku bounce was real, and if they can bounce back even more around Marina Bay, then McLaren's got a real fight on its hands right now. McLaren have said they are not skimping on papaya rules. Things have not changed. They are not being swayed by the public backlash. They go, I hear you, fans, but we're not changing things, which is going to make things very, very compelling, especially if they do end up being just a few seconds separated. Does Piastri try something? Does he settle? I think he will settle. But will Lando try and go all out and try and hoodwink or bamboozle his teammate, maybe pressure him into a mistake, which then Max Verstappen will capitalise on? So what's important for Lando right now is to acknowledge that Max is right there and make use of him in regards to maybe trying to claw some more points back to the championship with Piastri, his teammate. Because one thing is for sure, both drivers are trying to repair the reputations which were both tarnished last time out in a big way. No, neither driver aren't condemned, but it certainly wasn't a good look for either them or the team. And I will point you to a very good look over here, a video which you will enjoy. I'll see you over there. I'm just going to change my top. Just give me a moment.